morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whether you're watching live or archived, and welcome to episode number 99 of Nautel's Transmission Talk Tuesday webinar series. I'm your host, Jeff Welton, and today we're going to switch things around a little, tiny little bit. So the banner says IT security. That is 100% what we posted, and we will talk to that a little bit. But the discussion is IT in general, tips, tricks, troubleshooting thoughts. We're going to rely a lot on the folks in the audience. So if you've got any thoughts, input, indicate, or anything you want to discuss, hit the raise your hand, or if you hit a quiet spot, just unmute yourself and butt in. We'll have some fun. Uh, I've got, because I try to make it a habit of finding people smarter than me to talk about stuff with, which isn't really all that hard. I've got the handsome and talented Mr. William Harrison, who's the chief engineer for WETA in Washington, D.C. William, welcome, and welcome back, I guess would be a better way of putting it.
Well, thanks. Happy to be here.
And I should add that you'll notice that I shoot now. I want all my guests to be properly adorned with facial hair, or something like that.
I'm a little overdue for a trim, but
I say I've got summer beard and winter beard, but I left Indianapolis on the weekend. It was sunny in the 70s and 80s, or in the high 20s for the metric speaking folks on the planet, and flew home to a lovely snowstorm. So that was a whole lot of fun.
well, just can't win sometimes.
Some days. So, mandatory housekeeping slide. I see a lot of familiar names on here, but I see one or two new ones as well. If you've not attended one of our webinars before, on the control panel, you do have a question button. If you put anything into that question box, or the chat box as far as that goes, one of us will catch it, and we absolutely will make it a point to respond. So certainly, like I said, I put these on for y'all. Make sure you get everything out of it you can. If you're an SBE member, then the completion of an Nautel webinar does qualify for half of a recertification point under Schedule I of the research schedule. So whatever you use to keep track of all that stuff, make sure you jot it down. If you're not an SBE member, the next logical question is why not? And so, board of directors, well, the executive committee and a few other folks we're doing some strategic planning last weekend. That's why I was in Indy. If you do have any thoughts, suggestions, or things you'd like to see changed, drop me an email. Do that for any board of director you happen to know, but just let us know. We can't fix it if we don't know it's an issue. That same true with don't forget, I don't remember, other thanks. Sorry, I got distracted. Mr. Disembodied Voice, Edward Sylvester, the guy who puts all this together and herds all the cats. I want to shout out to him too.
Thank you, Jeff.
I just like to make him scramble and find the mute button, and then I just leave that uncomfortable silence until he does. But Ed, so side note, did you have to put a survey together for today?
Yes, there is a survey, and it has the correct scale. So instead of 1 to 5, it'll be 1 to 10.
So the point being that absolutely make sure you fill out the survey, and any suggestions for how we can improve these webinars or topics for future ones, make sure to fill that information in there, because you'll find actually from today that we quite literally pay attention to those. And as an example, when you registered for this webinar, one of the things that it left a space for, in addition to your name and where you're from, was any questions related to the webinar. And we got quite a few of them. So basically, I built the entire webinar around those questions, because you covered pretty much every topic I wanted to cover. So those became the talking points. So absolutely, like I say, I'd say you're doing my work for me. I guess I still got to do the actual lifting on finding somebody smarter than me and getting the clarifications. But yeah, we can build these as much as we possibly can for what folks want to know. So, William,
Yes,
first
sir.
question, and I surprised you with this one. You weren't aware of this.
I was not.
So as of yesterday, the FCC in the U.S. has pretty much banned consumer routers made outside of the US, which is almost 100% of them. Starlink says that their Wi-Fi routers made in Texas. Now, whether it meets the requirements or not, I do not know. This is new information. But the original question was, or what are your opinions on PFSense or concerns? And I think, like everything else, it's less to do with who makes it and more to do with how you use it.
Yeah, I think that that's probably true. The similar thing like PFSense, because you're using essentially an older computer with a couple of network cards in it or what have you. You also have open source firmware like is it OpenDRT or WRT? I think it's
Mm-hmm.
WRT,
Yes.
which would probably give you an option, at least if you want to try and extend the life or add a feature set to a router that you already had. But you did surprise me with this. I'm really curious to see what like Verizon and Comcast and other companies that provide you with internet service and give you a router, what they're going to do.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the intriguing things because, I mean, obviously, if I look around my house, I've got a mesh network that is made by Eero from Amazon, which is built in China. One of the biggest selling routers at Walmart is TP-Link, and TP-Link was the company that actually was according to the BBC article I read this morning, was the cause for this whole thing. So, obviously there's a need for some level of security, but how you get there, it's a pretty drastic change. Point being, keep your ARRIS router for your cable modem for a little while. Don't just swap it out tomorrow until you know that the new one is approved.
Absolutely.
Or, like you said earlier, get on Amazon, buy every router you can find before this takes effect. Because I assume that there's some level of time. I mean, I know most things the FCC does, they have to publish it in the Federal Register, and it takes effect, what, 30 or 60 days later?
I think it's 60. But it's been a while, so I might be wrong. The other question is, they're going to ban these things. How many people are going to start selling them on eBay for twice what they originally paid for them?
You could get a new TP-Link router for $250 for a limited time only. Buy it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can have it's going to be an interesting challenge. And like I said, I applaud the thought behind it. IT security at the consumer level is even less of a concern to the average person than it is at the broadcaster level. And my opinion of IT security in our industry has been no secret for several years. So this is something that folks do want to be aware of. By the way, any link you see in here, anything I post, I absolutely do try to credit it wherever I can. Most of this stuff was acquired very recently. As you can see, these were from articles today. So feel free to copy and click. I believe that Ed can make a PDF of this available later, and I am 100% certain that we can make those links clickable if you need them to be. Now, on a security measure, don't just randomly click any link in anything that anybody sends you without verifying that that link is resolving to the exact same thing it says it's resolving to. So that's IT security tip number one.
It's always good practice.
And speaking of IT security, so you and I had an interesting discussion about the barracks boxes because you don't like unbalanced audio. I'm a little less concerned about that. And the funny thing was, so I got on Showdown, and these numbers are as of about 2 hours ago. That's how many of each you could see on the internet visible. Now, the numbers on Thailand may be skewed a little bit because there's I want to say, Japanese company that has a product that has the name Thailand. So, this is not meant in any way to represent how many of whatever anybody's got on the market, but those are the units under those names that I can find right now with a very quick search, which is several thousand too many. I didn't
Absolutely.
I didn't do transmitters, but I promise you I can find Nautel transmitters, I can find Gates Air transmitters, I can find Elanos transmitters, all visible online. I saw some at Cresso's the other day. Um, I try as much as I can to every month or two search for the Nautels and just drop an email to anyone that's identifiable and say, hey, maybe you should close that door. But so the biggest challenge, I don't think, is who you use for a codec. I mean, there are obvious performance issues. You know, some are going to sound better, some are more flexible, but the security very much is an issue. And how do you do that when you're William, for example, when you're using a codec at a remote?
Well, unfortunately, when you're talking about a remote, you are really restricted as to what your connectivity is going to be. So, I've done a lot of remotes where the idea was, oh, they obviously have a decent internet service provider. They've got tons of bandwidth. We should be able to just plug in. But they either won't let you, which frankly is good security protocol, or you've got to bring in your own dedicated line. And the days of calling up the phone company and saying, hey, I need an ISDN line dropped at this concert hall, those days are gone. So a lot of the times these days, I end up going with either like a 5G solution or a combination of, they're fine, there's public Wi-Fi. What can I get to work over the public Wi-Fi and hope that it still works when you've got an audience of 1,000 people in there? The barracks boxes, again, I don't have anything against them specifically. I'd much rather have balanced audio than unbalanced audio, but I use them when I have to, and they do work. They work very well. But you do need to be careful with what you decide to allow to expose. If you're going to forget to change the default password or leave it on the default port, if you're going to do anything like bring your own firewall and throw it in front of it, all those things are good things to try and remember to do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes they get forgotten.
Right. Well, and the other thing too is a lot of it'll vary. Like I can use a Max Connect or a cell phone hotspot, and on my cell phone, I'm typically always running a VPN. So, and we'll talk to that in a bit. So anything I happen to connect to that hotspot has got some level of protection. But I think we can lull ourselves into a false sense of security with, because I've heard a lot, oh, we're only turned on at this location for 2 hours, so we won't have a problem.
Well, that's the same logic that people have when they take their laptop and connect it to public Wi-Fi in an airport. It's like, well, I'm only
Or
going to be in this airport for an hour, so what are the odds of something happening?
or
Well,
run into the gas station while you leave your car running.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing, because we just talked about laptops, a lot of remotes and even a lot of dedicated things are now a soft codec. So you're using Shodan, you're bringing up Barracks and Comrex and Tieline. It'd be really interesting to find a way to search for some of the soft codecs that are installed on people's computers where they're trying to do either a two-way interview or a remote concert or something like that.
So, do you have names to any of those?
I shouldn't have said anything because I knew you were going to put me on the spot. There's a IPDTL. Trying to think of the one we use here, Clean Feed. Comrex has a great product. I don't want to recommend one over the other. Comrex has a great
Sure.
product with the Opal because you basically send somebody a link and then they're just using the browser in order to make the connection back. But yeah, there are a bunch, and there are also soft codecs that are designed to work with some of the hardware devices.
So if I search Clean Feed as an example, I find 34 instances.
Well, see, there you go. And those are
Which
people that
is,
probably have it installed on a computer at like a studio, and it's just overly exposed.
yeah. And I think that, and we'll get into that aspect of it in a little bit, but I think the biggest issue I have with IT security is visibility. I mean, it's great not to have default username and password, but if you can see it, it's a target.
Yeah, absolutely. The simple things is we're using GoToWebinar right here, but if we were doing a Teams call or a Zoom call, that's 99% the same as I have a soft codec in a location. What are the odds of somebody being able to break in and get into that meeting and either listen in when they shouldn't or put audio over top of it?
Well, and you'll recall when during the early days of COVID, when everybody was getting into Zoom for the first time and not paying attention to the settings, just click and go. I mean, a lot of those were 100% wide open.
Absolutely. I
And
say the word absolutely a lot. I never realized that until right now.
you know what's going to happen? We're going to finish this. You're going to play the recording back and keep score, and like just because that's the kind of thing I would do. So another question was talking about Cisco at the top end and port forwarding at the low end, and where does Unify fit? And this isn't really a router or it's kind of sort of a security question. I mean, Unify is Ubiquiti's mid-range Wi-Fi service. What are your thoughts
Well,
in general?
I've used a lot of Ubiquity stuff over the years, both for point-to-point links or point-to-multipoint links, or trying to get Wi-Fi, say, outside a building onto a patio area. And I actually, I don't want to give away too much. I use their security cameras as well, which work
Hmm.
pretty well. Um, it's a product with a correct use case scenario. The difference between going with a licensed microwave link versus a Unify unlicensed microwave link, the difference is tenfold in terms of price, and that's before you pay a tower company to climb up and install it.
Right.
So, there's definitely a place for them. I don't object to their use, but just like anything else we've talked about, proper security is important. I don't care if you have a Cisco device or a Unify device. You need to change the default password. You need to restrict the management band. You need to try and only use it and only open up ports that you absolutely need to open up ports to. You
Yeah.
don't just want to hang it on the tower, plug a cable into it. Hey, it works. I'm done. That's
Yeah.
that's not the right way to do it.
Well, and I tell people these days, and transmitters are a good example. Somebody called me up, they bought a new VX, and I mean the VX, low power VX, a VX1, whatever. Time you get it out of the box and get it on the air, assuming you've got the RF there and the power and everything, about a half an hour, give or take. And they were like, yeah, half an hour, and I was done. And it's like, no, half an hour, and you were ready to start setting up the networking, set up the IP addresses, configure your presets, configure your alarms. Um, you've got about 8 hours worth of work left to do. You've just got it so it's ready to go on the air. And the same holds true for anything you connect online. If you don't have it in such a way that, well, again, if people can see it, people can hit it.
That's very true.
So that is 100%. That's my line. If you can see it, it's a target. But
The the other thing I want to say about this is we're talking about at the top end you have Cisco. Well, Cisco owns a bunch of other companies and they make smaller consumer-based gear for, my house. I can buy a small business router or a small business managed switch.
mhm.
Technically that's owned by Cisco. It doesn't mean that it's just as good as the multi-thousand-dollar Cisco I have in my rack room because I'm doing an audio over IP system.
Right,
It doesn't have the same capability, but it's
right.
still technically a Cisco.
And I mean by definition, we run Sophos, and well, our routing is done with Fortinet. And I mean, some of the bigger universities use Palo Alto, but you can punch holes in anything.
Yeah,
And
if
and
somebody wants to get into it bad enough, they're going to fight on it until they can get into it.
right. So two-way or two things to note. Number one, regardless of the name on it, it's only as good or as bad as the team setting it up. And number two, a cheap one can be made pretty secure, and a good one can be made pretty porous, tied to number one. So it really does come down to, and I think this in IP security, in troubleshooting, and tips in general, a lot of it comes back to what do you want to achieve and how much visibility are you prepared to get away with. And I told somebody, I said, the only totally secure system is the one sitting in a box that's not connected to the outside world at all. I mean, as an example, so we're doing an SBE-NS at NAB on the Tuesday and Thursday of the show, or Tuesday and Wednesday rather, for the RF 101 track and emerging technologies track that Fred Willard and Dave Bialik are putting together. For those, we'll be using an NAB host computer. And I'd asked this morning, I said, if I bring my own laptop with, and they're like, bring everything in on a USB stick. And I'm thinking, if I was doing that with a Nautel laptop, that'd be a problem because our policies prohibit the use of external USB sticks. If it hasn't been scanned by our IT staff, it doesn't get plugged into my computer.
Hmm. Well,
So, and
that's a good way to prevent, having people pick up a random USB stick and accidentally plugging it in.
well, and where that, as with all policies, the policies all happen after somebody lets the horse out of the barn. And so somebody was at a hotel one day and had just taken a shipping document. Wasn't me this time. And, but they'd taken their shipping document, plugged it into the hotel business office computer to print the shipping docs for whatever demo unit they had at the show. And of course, that USB stick immediately got infected with the 20 or 30 viruses and how many ever Trojans and whatever that happened to be residing on that hotel business office computer, because oddly enough, they don't scan those every day. So, they brought it, they then used it at some other point to plug into their laptop and promptly infected that. And our system said, hey, you have a problem there. So, yeah, again, policies always happen after the horse has been let loose. But yeah, so just at WETA, what are the kind of things that you guys have as restrictions? And we're kind of off the topic of routers, but kind of in the same vein.
Well, it depends. WETA is not just radio; we're also television. So even though we allow USB sticks to be connected, it depends on what you're connecting it to, how you're supposed to do it. So I'll give you an example. Somebody shoots some video in the field, they bring it back on a piece of, either a USB stick or an SD card or whatever. You don't just go to one of the machines, any machine you want, and plug it in. There's a specific machine designated for ingest. So when you plug that piece of that media device into that specific machine, the first thing it does is it checks for absolutely everything it can before it lets you access the device and copy those files into a system that it could potentially take down.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's not a case where you just walk in and plug it into a production machine and say, we're good to go.
Yeah, I don't care how late you are, how far behind you are, how fast that story needs to get on the air. You still need to do it in the right way just to make sure you're safe and don't take down the entire system.
Yeah. So notifications, there was a good comment about using Slack messaging for alerts, and we're a Teams facility. We don't, I don't think, unless we use it in our Jira database, don't use Slack much, so I'm less familiar with it. But you had steered me toward Pushover once, and Pushover was cool because any system that will send out an email alert, Pushover assigns a unique email address to your account, and any email sent to that address will trigger a notification on your mobile device.
100% correct.
Oh, I know. I use it all the time. I love it. But but yeah, it's one of the few things that I've actually spent the whatever it was, $10 or $20 to subscribe. It was a one-time fee of like $10. It wasn't much.
It's even less than that. It's a one-time fee of $5 for personal use for lifetime.
Canadian here, you forgot. My number's going to be bigger.
my mistake. $5 American, I should say.
There you go.
But it's actually a very useful piece of software, and they have it in 3 different flavors. They have it for the Mac iOS folks, they have it for the Android folks, and then they have it for people who want to use it on like your desktop computer. So I think it's $5 per type of device you want to use it on. So $5 will get you all the Android stuff or all the iOS stuff or the desktop stuff.
Yeah, and I did verify that that took me to the Pushover website so that QR code will work if you grab it with your phone.
The side note, that's another great thing to talk about for security. The QR codes that everybody's going in and scanning. You walk into a restaurant, there's a QR code instead of a menu. You sure hope that QR code takes you to the menu for that restaurant and not somewhere else.
Right. And that's why I brought that up. I did verify this QR code before I put it in the slide deck.
Yeah. So, but I found Pushover because I was really looking for something that was more timely than text messaging. I had devices that would either send an email or send a text message. And text messages tend to be a best effort situation. So we'll send it when we have time, but I would get a notification my generator's running 4 hours after my generator stopped running. And that just doesn't help you in this situation. So
Right.
pushover was what I found to try and increase the timeliness of the notifications.
Well, and one other thing, I mean, a lot of folks have used over the years email to SMS. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the cell carriers used to give you J. Welton at mobile.att.net or whatever. And by the way, I don't use AT&T, so don't try that one because it's probably not going to go to me. But most of the cell companies have eliminated that feature over the past few months, and quite literally the past, like within the last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. Say it again.
So if
You're
you
absolutely correct, because they realized that companies were able to send text-based spam a heck of a lot easier by maintaining this. And it wasn't like it was difficult to guess. It was usually phone number at carrier.com.
right,
And
so
by disabling it, they reduce the number of messages they have to carry and how much the customers get annoyed.
right, and like with pushover, you get something that is kind of let's see, well, like mine, for example, 4CNWQMOQTP at homemail.net or whatever. And I may have messed some of that up on purpose, but yeah, it's a fairly non-standard looking email address. It's not like J. Welton at whatever. So I don't know if that adds any level. I've never received a spam to any of my pushover accounts, so I assume that it works well, or they
Uh,
do a good job of scanning it.
I'm in the same boat that you are. I don't think I've ever gotten a message that I would count as spam. It was always something that I set up to send to that address.
Yeah. And I mean, I like it because it does set, it's treated the same as anything else that does push notifications on your phone. So you can configure it to be as annoying as you want. You can configure it to break through quiet times if you wish. So, you can configure it. So, and I don't know, you don't have, I don't believe, the ability to discern. Like, I can't say if I get an alarm from the transmitter that rings the phone regardless, but if I get one from the automation, it doesn't. I don't think you have that choice. What do you know?
I don't think you do either. You probably could configure like a filter, so your transmitter and your automation system could send an email to your email account, and then you could have filters in your email account that says, this is from the transmitter. I'm going to go ahead and send this to the pushover address, versus
Mhm.
this is from the automation system. I'm not going to send it to the pushover address.
Right.
But that's typically the way that I do selective monitoring if I need to.
Yep. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Um, any other thoughts on that? Has anybody out there got any other ideas on sending alerts and notifications? I mean, like I said, a lot of stuff these days will do an email when it gets an alarm. Some stuff will still contact a phone number. There's still a lot of dial-up remotes out there. I saw a comment this morning about somebody still running a 30-year-old um, sign systems. Not going to say I think the sign systems go back further than that, but and more, how do you get a copper line that they can deal with? And we found something cool. So we've been having an issue with our support line as an example, which is a VoIP 3CX system. And if you call in from a Verizon cell phone, Verizon doesn't parse the DTMF codes well enough for them to nail on to what 3CX expects to hear as far as the tones. So it will quite frequently, if you're on Verizon and you call it and you press one for customer service, it'll take you somewhere else. Well, through the day now, we just forward all the other options to zero. But yeah, just the kind of thing that can happen a lot.
Yeah, I've noticed a similar thing, even dealing with the transmitter remote control and calling it from my cell phone. It doesn't always get the touch tones.
Yeah. And so that's the sort of thing. I know there's been a lot of cases where, and I forget which one specifically, I'm going to call him out and see if he's actually paying attention at the moment. But I see Kirk Harnack in the audience, and Kirk's in the unique position of being both a, a industry rep. He's done manufacturing. He is 100% a field engineer. So he's kind of done a little bit of everything and anything. Kirk, do you have any specific thoughts on notifications and stuff like that?
That's a great question, and I've certainly dealt with a fair amount of that in the past few years, and it seems like it's a very individual, case by case, and I'll tell you, Google and ChatGPT may be your best friends in setting these things up. I know there was a time when, for example, at Delta Radio, my stations in Mississippi, we had things like, I think we had a couple of printers and some other devices that could send you an email to alert, hey, I'm low on toner. Hey, I'm out of paper. Hey, somebody's abusing me. Don't sit on the glass, things like that. And to make them work, there was a long list of instructions to make them work with Gmail. And you had to go through, at least it was outlined for you in Google Gmail help, but you could make it work. And then at some point, it seems like that quit working. And when I, Googled it or looked it up after that, indeed, Gmail had changed some of its parameters, for more security. I get that. And then it turned out that our company there used email services from 1&1. And so we found out how to make that work. And of course, it used to be really simple. You could just send it to your, SMTP server, and as long as you had the right password, that would work. But of course, that becomes too insecure over time. I'm talking, 15 years ago where this worked fine. So in the meantime, where do we stand today? Well, most every piece of gear that we have either has an app associated with it, or it alerts us in some other way, not relying on email. And I like email alerts. I like the concept and the way that works, and I tend to pay attention to my email, and I get a ding on my phone when I get a new email, so that's nice. But these days we just don't have any gear that I'm thinking of where we depend on the inanimate object, the device, sending an email. Now, my business partner, Larry Fuss, is probably more up on that than I am. So I guess what I'm saying is it seems technologically a bit passé because of all the security that email providers have had to implement. So yeah, I'm not up on the latest, because it seems like whatever you implement is likely to change at some point because of more security.
Right. Now, CJ in the audience had a question about tools for sending SMS from email. And as I say, most of the mobile providers are getting totally out of that. But does anybody have any input on any apps that can do that over and beyond, like pushover, where you're getting a notification on your phone similar to a text, but not a text?
There used to be a generic one, and the name is escaping me right now.
There was
But
one called Email to Text a while
yeah,
ago.
that might be
Q
what I'm
being a
thinking
two,
of.
but
Yeah, or maybe it was either that or like Click Send or something like that. But yeah, that was the same type of thing.
Yep, ClickSend is try.clicksend.com is what Google is showing me.
Oh,
There's another one called Text Magic. Twilio is an SMS gateway provider. TWILIO.
yeah,
So,
they charge money, and if memory
mhm.
serves, they were quite expensive when I researched them for something.
Yeah, and I see ClickSend says get started free. Anything that says get started free usually means, but after 30 days, there will be a bill if you want to keep doing this.
Yeah, I'm sure that there is. But
So,
yeah, even though we've talked about a bunch of companies that have sort of eliminated that service, it's probably worth looking into it and seeing if the mobile carrier that you're using still does offer it in any way, or if it's something that, like, oh, for an additional $1 a month, will enable that on your account.
right. So no, that's a good request, CJ. And yeah, so ClickSend, Twilio, and whatever the other one I said are some options. That was a just Google search for email to SMS. But
Yeah.
and I don't have any firsthand experience with any of them since I've installed pushover on my mobile devices. That seems to have pretty much done the trick. I have it on both the iPhone and the Android, and then just have my transmitter send the email to both addresses.
That's a very smart way to do it. And Kirk, to your point, you're absolutely right. Whatever you set up is most likely to change, either because software features are changing or security is increasing or what have you. One of the things that we've been able to do here, because we have our own internal email server, is that we have a whitelist on that email server. So if it's on a network that can be reached, I'm going to use the word internally, but we do a lot of VPN stuff too, and it has an IP address for the originating message that's on the whitelist, it allows it to send an email to an internal address. So I'm not really dealing with the public email providers doing anything, but that internal email address can then be set up to forward to an external email address, say a Google email, etc. Which works fairly well for us for email notification if we're looking email notification only.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean everything comes down to, I mean, I've got some customers who flat out just want to keep the old sign systems working. And if that's what works for you, absolutely. 100%. You don't have to worry about IT security with the sign systems. I made the joke, might have been on one of these recently, that everybody, and at the risk of beating the dead horse, everybody gives us grief about how long it's taken to get rid of the flash in the AUI. But that little flash app, I mean, you've got some pretty good security through obscurity, because if somebody does hit the IP address of your transmitter, if they don't have that app installed, they're not getting in. So, sometimes there are unintended side benefits, I guess. Uh, all right. So, RDS data, and this is cool because at this point, RDS data, and you could say PAD for the same thing, but when you're sending data over an audio link or even audio over IP link, troubleshooting, I mean, as an example, and RDS would be a prime example because most folks send it as ASCII over IP these days from the automation direct to either the transmitter or to a middleware device. And it's interesting because from the field support perspective, the vast majority, and I don't have a guess at a percentage, if I said one, I'd be making it up, but the vast majority of the support calls we get with RDS issues isn't a problem with the configuration of the transmitter presets. It's that the data isn't making it there at all to begin with. And there's Port Peaker as an example. It's not officially supported anymore, but you can still download it. But Port Peaker, you could put a laptop and set it up to the transmitter IP address and port 7005, and it will look for anything coming into that port. If you don't see the data coming in, you're not seeing it. By the same token, I put the Mini, the 673 up on the screen, but that's a great way of looking to see if you're actually broadcasting it. Because, you might have a situation where you're seeing it on one car receiver, but not on another one.
Yeah, we use a program called Portmon, and it does something very much similar to what you're describing, where you can look at a particular port and see everything that's coming into it. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I do like the Mini. I'm now quite spoiled. Earlier this year, I was able to get one of the Innovonics mod monitors, their new HD mod monitors, the 551, I think, which shows you everything on a web-based interface. So it's very comprehensive, both for RDS as well as PSD and logos and album art and everything else you might want to look at.
Yeah, and we use that's the Sophia, isn't it?
It's not the Sophia. They have a dedicated 551, and they have a slimline one too, which is like a 552 or something.
Okay.
But I've been really pleased with it so far. But regardless, one of the things that both the 551 and that Inno Mini you're looking at, I think they have alarm outputs to tell you if something hasn't changed in a particular amount of time. So like, oh, I sent a note saying, or sent out data saying I'm playing this particular song, and an hour later it still says it's that particular song. Unless you're like me and it's classical music, it's
Mhm.
probably incorrect then, and you've either lost the path, or the device that's sending out the data has a problem, or what have you.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are ways to alarm it. It's been a while since I looked at the Inno Mini to see if it'll do like any sort of alerting over the internet. I know the
So
551 will do SNMP traps.
so the 673 does have both audio loss and RDS data loss alarms.
Perfect.
Now, it's just sending out a course of contact closure. What you do with that is up to you. But as an example, if you were running one of our transmitters, or I'm pretty sure Gates Air, I don't know about anybody else, you could use that contact closure to trigger an external alarm, and maybe just have it send the email to say, hey, you know, RDS alarm or whatever.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, since they're just saying it's a failure of RDS data, I don't know if that means it's not seeing anything, meaning it's really just looking at like the PI code, or if it's looking at album or artist or RT and RT text plus.
Right. And that's something worth noting. If you don't have the PI code installed, whether you're using middleware or your transmitter's RDS generator, a lot of receivers will not display the RDS data. They won't see anything if there's no PI code. And other ones, like at our station, as an example, we forgot to set up the PI code when we were putting in our new VX. And our program director's 2013 Nissan was very cheerfully displaying artist and song title just beautifully. My 2018 Silverado said, I got nothing. There's nothing here, because the Silverado needs to see the PI code before it will do anything else.
Yep.
So that's one of those. If you get a situation where it's displaying on some vehicles and not others, or some receivers and not others, it's almost always a configuration issue, not a data transfer issue.
Yep.
All right, moving on. I just double checked to make sure I didn't miss anything obvious question wise. No, I got everything we got come in. Jeff Wilson had asked me to put the links for the two articles earlier in the chat, but if you Google US blocks routers or something like that, you'll get a whole bunch. And I just picked the two from Forbes and BBC World Service. So, all right. Other thing, and this was one of those. This is a dangerous question. I have Anthropos Claude on my personal device. We do use for some general stuff at the office, like if we want to do a press release and you want to make it look prettier, we'll use Chat GPT. We have very specific policies on what you can and can't do with AI. Anything, for example, relating to design or finance, or anything that should be a little sensitive, the only AI we're allowed to use is our internal closed systems, and we do have a couple. So that's the kind of thing that the big thing I think to remember is, especially with ChatGPT or Claude or any of the generative, the open AIs, whatever you put in there does become pretty much public domain, or is at least used as the part of the research base.
Yeah, you're basically training it by using it.
Right. And the name thing that is blocked out on the screen, by the way, is our IT director. Greg didn't tell me to block his name, but just out of an abundance of caution, I'm not going to publish anybody's name on the internet until they've said I can. William, on the other hand, his name's all over the place. So,
For better or for worse.
yep. But yeah, I mean, I think the most pressing AI governance issue at this time, to answer the question specifically, is that most places now the bigger groups absolutely, I think, do, and as do we, but most places do not have a specific written policy on the subject. And I think that's something that we really need to start doing, not just AI, but IT security in general. If you don't have a policy and train your people on it, then how do you, how do you make sure that they're actually practicing safe practices? Like if you were starting, as an example, thinking about doing a contest for something, and you're generating all that info on AI, and you've got the station calls in there. If somebody happens to say, "What's WADO doing for contests?" you may or may not get the answer. So yeah, it's better not to just throw that stuff out in the open.
Yeah, and I worry slightly about using AI to help me debug software or add a feature or what have you, because now the internal workings of the code that I uploaded to ask AI to look into it to make it better is now part of AI's database of things that it can use to do things for other people.
Right. So anything you want to do that you want to remain somewhat proprietary absolutely should not be there. Now you can with some of them, and I know Claude, for example, has the ability to limit how much of that data is put into the public use database. So I will almost always, if I ask it a question, scrub all that later.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's still always a concern. And I mean, remembering that, this is it's cloud based. It's going out there in the open ether, so you're relying on their security at that point as well.
Yeah, it's also interesting because you see companies starting to use AI to do threat detection, which
Hmm.
is then training the AI to help somebody to defeat threat protection.
Right. Yep, and that's a prime example. Like Sophos, as an example, has added the feature. So if you scan anything on Sophos, it'll cheerfully give you all the things that it sees, and then it'll show you every weakness with every one of them. So here are the known exploits, and from an IT security perspective, for looking for holes, it's a wonderful thing. From an IT security perspective, for having threat actors find the holes, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, very much. And there's nothing. I don't think we're going to get away from it. I mean, AI for the purpose of helping you craft a well-worded email, wonderful tool, beautiful. For the purpose of helping you write code faster, assuming you know enough of the code to go through and debug and take out any bloat or obvious errors, sure, why not? For the purpose of designing missile guidance, a little more skeptical. But uh, don't do a lot of missile guidance in broadcast yet.
yet.
You never know what's coming. All right. So yeah, that I think that the big thing in my mind for the most pressing issue is the fact that too many places do not have actual written policies. And the policy could be anything from don't use it ever to anything goes, but at least put something in writing so that everybody has a guideline and you are setting expectations across the board.
Excellent advice.
Well, it'll happen now and again. So I head to my only dad joke of the day. I promise you, promise, 100%. I was going to answer this one, but it's classified. Ditto bump. All right. Um, but I guess, and as broadcasters, there's not a lot of specifically classified information we deal with. So it is kind of an open question there. I mean, like TP Link as an example, and again, as we said earlier, it was the impetus for the FCC move to block all non-domestic routers. It had a proven backdoor that was open to another part of the world that may or may not have good thoughts toward us. Um, so would I send that kind of data over a TP Link router? Probably not. Having said that, it's possible to have a Palo Alto system poked full of holes, which makes it no more secure. So that's a really, I don't think it's so much a question of the equipment. I think it's more a question of how it's configured again.
Yeah, it's also a question about the people who actually are using it. I don't know if you saw the story. It was either last week or a couple of days ago, but there was a sailor who went for a jog on the top of an aircraft carrier. And he had his smartwatch on and turned on the tracker, and he could show people where he was running and everything else. Well, it revealed the location of the aircraft carrier to the rest of the world because it
Hmm.
uploaded that data to whatever app he was using to keep track of his runs.
Right.
So, this aircraft carrier has billions of dollars of security, equipment to try and keep as many things classified as possible. And one sailor with a $120 smartwatch gave away the position.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the human factor, which is so hard to account for. But in
Well,
terms of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and I mean, that's like when you look at it, almost everything we have that's IP connected, whether it's a smartwatch, a Google Fit Ring, I've got two cell phones beside me. All of them have location services, and whether they're on or off, that's up to you. But you're right.
Yeah, and even simple devices that you wouldn't think about. You've got a smart thermostat in your house. Well, it can probably tell you how many people are in your house right now. It doesn't have a camera on it, but I bet you it's keeping track of all the movement.
Yep. Oh,
Um,
100%. I've got two remote sensors, both of which will trigger if there's any motion in that area to tell me whether that room is occupied or unoccupied, so it can adjust the temperature setting in that area.
exactly. But
Yep.
going back to the question, there probably isn't a lot of classified information, but there's probably a lot of highly sensitive information. And what comes to mind, at least for my line of work, because I do work for a public broadcaster, is anybody who donates. So any of the financial information, donor information, what do we need to do in order to keep that information secure? And the answer used to be simple before COVID hit because it was on servers in this building. They were in locked racks. Only certain people had access. Only certain computers in the building were even connected to the same network. Well, that all kind of changed when we decided to migrate things to go to the cloud. And now, realistically, there's a whole line of devices that are, in place in order to let the person who's working from home on their, WIDA issued laptop access that information. And the question becomes, how do they do it securely?
Yeah.
So it's not a dedicated piece of IT equipment, but part of it is encryption, part of it is VPN, part of it is the laptop doesn't access the cloud service directly. The laptop accesses our building's network. Our building's network has a dedicated path into where the cloud installation is.
Right.
So you're trying to limit the number of vectors that you have control over.
Well, and as an example, I mean, one of the things that our email filtering, which is done by Sophos, but our email filtering is configured so if an email has financial information in it, it's blocked immediately. If you wanted to buy a transmitter with a credit card number, that requires a phone call. It's not going to be transmitted by email, not to us. And that's one example. I mean, for us, we do deal with some classified information with one of our facilities, and their network is very distinctly walled off from the network that I'm allowed to touch, which is, for the best for sure. But again, it comes back to zero trust. If somebody is not qualified to deal with something, they absolutely shouldn't have any access to it at all.
Yeah, and as sad as it is, I just talked about the human element, but a lot of the times I see things that were done by someone to make their life easier. Like I
Hmm.
need to access this from there, and I'm just going to make it so that I can get to it from my desk because
Right.
it prevents me from having to get up and walk 40 feet down the hall.
Right.
Uh,
Well, prime example, email, company email. So I do not have Outlook web access to my Office 365 email account, not from any device except the Nautel provision devices in my house. So, yeah, prime example. And I mean, we had one email come around a little while ago talking about, shoot, I forget what it was because anything that's suspicious, I hit report first and delete second. But it had a link in it. I think it was talking about retirement or something, a retirement plan. I don't remember, a pension plan. But one of our guys who will know who I'm talking about because he's listening right now, clicked the link. And, you very promptly get sent to the Nautel school that shouldn't have clicked that link dummy PowerPoints. but yeah, it's, sometimes you almost have to go hunting your own staff isn't the right word, but it really is. Our IT security manager told me he sent a phishing email out to a couple of dozen people last week or 2 weeks ago, it was recently, and way more of them than should have clicked the link.
Yeah,
So,
you have to train them because the techniques for those type of emails are frankly getting better. It used to be easy because you could read it and go, oh, well, that's misspelled and it's got some weird domain name
grammar,
on
yeah.
it or what have you.
But
And
AI makes that almost impossible to detect.
exactly, there you go.
Yeah, the one thing AI does really, really well is craft phishing emails. So there was also a recommendation for a mobile device-friendly VPN. I use TunnelBear, and it's funny because I didn't know you did, but you do too, apparently.
I do actually, and the unfortunate reality is I don't have a lot of experience with other ones because I settled on this one, so I haven't kept up with other options. So I feel like I can't offer a lot of other choices for people to play with.
Yeah. And William did put a little comment in the private chat, and you could have just shared it out loud, but hover and think before clicking that link is going to be my new IT security mantra. And I don't see Greg in the audience, but if he was, that'd be something that I'm sure will end up in an email around the company. But yeah,
I
so
I don't can't take any credit for it. I saw it on some cartoon my kid was watching.
so Tunnel Bear, and again, you may find like VPNs are like everything else. You can make them as secure or as unsecure as you want to. So it's a good idea to have one, but if you A, don't turn it on, or B, run it wide open, then you're not really gaining anything except a false sense of security. Um, I again, I do use Tunnel Bear, and I like it a lot, although I see it's been long enough since I've turned it on. I primarily use it when I'm on the road because when I'm at the house, I've got a VPN on my network over and above.
Hmm.
The advantage with it is that it does have both mobile and laptop based versions. So I also run it on my personal laptop if I happen to have that on the road with me.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the Unify stuff from Ubiquiti, and I know that earlier this year they were coming out with like a travel router. So I actually think TunnelBear works with the travel router, so you can, it's think of it as a Wi-Fi hotspot, but it's not necessarily a Wi-Fi hotspot, but it would just
Mhm.
route your traffic through your TunnelBear account.
Right. And that's, I guess, the big thing is, as an example, like I've used the Nautel VPN a lot when I'm on the road. So typically, if I'm running a device, it's going to be through a VPN, and I've got the encryption turned on, and I am paying 100% attention to exactly what I'm looking at. Um, Tunnel Bear does give you the ability also to, if your connection is disrupted, block all traffic until it reconnects. Uh, like I say to people, there are, I think, and I'm not sure about this, so if anybody in the audience has got a thought on it, there are downloadable VPNs, so you've actually got the software on your device. Tunnel Bear is cloud-based. It's based out of, well, Toronto, Canada, but they've got servers all over the world. So, whether you want to own it or whether you want to subscribe to it and have somebody else do the security, that's kind of your own decision.
Agreed.
Now, oh, by the way, Tunnel Bear also does split tunneling. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. There's virtually no reason. So split tunneling is when some stuff is bypasses the VPN, and I guess there are valid reasons for doing it, but yeah, I'd avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, the only scenario that I've had to do it is if I was doing something from like one PC at my house to a second PC at my house. Literally they're sitting 10 feet away from each other. Why would I push all that traffic up through TunnelBear?
Right. Because at that point, you're sending it out of the building and bringing it back into the building.
Yeah,
When a point to point within your own network is a whole lot cleaner.
exactly.
So, yeah, there may be reasons. Okay, we had a couple of miscellaneous questions because I don't want anybody to think I don't address all questions. The first one is talking about VS 2.5V or PAs that are tripping on voltage fluctuations and restored when power is the power is cycled. So turn it off, turn it on again. By the way, other IT note. I discovered, and William, maybe you can shed some light on this because it was a totally new thing to me, but I got told probably a year ago from one of our IT guys that that using restart will give you a hard reboot, whereas shutdown just gives you basically a sleep mode reboot. So if you need to fully cycle something, you're better to do a restart than a shutdown and then turn it off and turn it on again.
Uh, it depends on how things are configured. You know, computers that are configured to use the shutdown to really just go into hibernate, you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. You know, all the computers that I end up having to deal with, if you tell it to shut down, it's actually shutting itself fully down. I'm going
Okay.
into the BIOS and configuring it to do that. But yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
Okay.
The most effective way to do it is, you know, like pull the power cord.
Right. So very cool. Good to know. The challenge with a laptop is, of course, that you pull the power cord. You also got to pull the battery.
Yeah, you got to
And,
leave it turned on for another 4 hours.
and I did have one that totally locked up. Actually, I was getting ready to do a webinar, and I was at one of our reps' place, well, down at Max Connect headquarters in Alabama, and my laptop decided to blue screen me, but it wouldn't do a power off, it wouldn't do a shutdown, it just sat there, and the only solution was to pull the back off and pull the battery. So that was kind of fun. But and the other question was arranging a webinar on the architecture of digital terrestrial television, and that's one that we probably will not do, where we do not build a TV product, but I did want to be sure that I addressed it. Surprisingly enough, instead of going like 10 or 15 minutes past the top of the hour, we're only a couple minutes late. So, William, I
Well,
want to thank you for I think I want to thank you for that.
I hope it was useful to someone.
So, if there's any questions or comments, this would be a good time. I tried to address stuff as we went through, but if there's anything we missed, either here or, like I said, you will get a survey at the end. Make absolutely 100% sure you fill it out. Tell us what we could have done better, because this is how I learn. Obviously, online information, this webinar, as with all of our webinars, will be archived, and Mr. Sylvester will have it hidden in the not published on the YouTube channel soon. So you'll be able to get to it from there. On that note, I'm going to, I won't say give everybody a little extra time, because we did go a couple of minutes past the top of the hour, but I will thank everybody very much for your time today. And we hope to see you all. Let's see, we may have another one coming up in April before NAB. Hopeful, but I'm not sure if we'll do it as a Transmission Talk Tuesday or not. If we do, it'll be episode number 100. And if it's the one I think it is, it might be an interesting one to do as episode 100. So I'm just going to leave you with that cliffhanger teaser, and we'll see where we go from there. But on that note, thank you all very much, folks, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. See y'all later.